Alright, this is a throwing demo that I did the other day. I just threw a basic bowl because it's one of the easiest pots to learn, and I suggest that when you're first starting off you should start off with bowls because they're pretty easy. So some things to make sure you're checking when you first get started. Make sure that you know what kind of clay body you're using, because that's really important. So in this video I'm using white clay, a white clay body. There's lots of other kinds that you could be using, so just always make sure you know what you're using. Make sure you have all the tools you need, because it's kind of a pain to have to get up and like sneak around your wheel without breaking anything or bumping into anything. So make sure you get yourself completely situated before you start throwing. Make sure you have a bowl of water. That's going to be helpful. Alright, so let's get started with the video.
Hello, welcome to Clay 101. So today I'm going to throw with some white clay. So it is important to make sure you know what clay body you're using. So the first step, get your wheel, get one of these. This is a bat. Find these little bat holes and these little bat pins, and you just put the holes over the pins, and there you go. Make sure it's nice and stable. And it's always a good plan to clean off all the dust from your bat, and then take your towel and dry off your bat on a dry surface. So the next step is to slam the clay down. Some people like to do something like this, where they roll the clay around, so it kind of makes a point, and then it's less likely when you slam it down to make a bubble. So I just do that, and then you do clay on there. So your clay's on the wheel. So what you need to do is you need to make it more securely to the wheel. So you're gonna gently get your wheel going. Your hands should be dry for all this, and you just press it down and in. So like this while it spins. So it's going to slightly make it push a little towards the center. So you're adding equal pressure with each hand from opposite sides. And it's also going to push down, so it'll secure it more to the wheel head. Next, you're going to want to take your water that you should have out. You can see this, but there's water right here. Just have a bucket. Always make sure you label your bucket with what type of clay body you're using. So my hands are wet now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to center. So for centering, you use two hands. The basic form for centering is you want to take your elbows and you want to lock them in right here. So you don't want them to be able to move. So right now I feel kind of like a robot. So just make yourself feel like a robot. Next, you're going to take your hand and you want to pin it down, your left hand. You pin your left hand down. Or if you throw lefty, you're going to want to switch the wheel. There's a switch on the side, and then you'll be doing all this backwards. But I throw righty, so I'm just going to show you. So I take my left hand and I pin it down to the side of the wheel. And then this patch right here of my palm is the most solid part where all that force is going. So when you're using your left hand, you may have to make sure that the clay goes to this part of your palm as opposed to the fingers, because the fingers aren't really getting any of that force, so there's no point in locking your hand in. So that's the left hand, and so you're going to want to lock that in, and as you can see, the clay goes around the hand. Normally you do this with two hands, but I'll get to that step later. So the clay's going around the hand, and it's kind of, every time it goes around, it smushes to that shape that I'm making with this part of my hand right here. So for centering, there's coning up and coning down, or shortening and widening the diameter, as some people call it. What you're going to do is you have your left hand pinned there, so it's kind of like a fence. It's like a border that your clay is always going to hit, and it's not going to go past, and that'll kind of give it that shape that your hand is letting it have right there. And it'll give it that diameter right there. So then you take your other hand, your right hand, and you squeeze in from the side at the bottom, and that'll kind of squish in. So see, my clay just went up considerably. So that's how that works. Next is coming down. So right now it's tall and skinny, so we're going to make it short and wide. So you have to re-wet your hands, make sure the clay is always really wet, because any friction between your hands and the clay will ruin everything for you. So next, you take your left hand, and you're going to want to have it positioned like where it was before. And as you push down with your right hand, you need to make sure that your left hand is moving out, because you're pushing the clay down, so your hand needs to kind of let it go out with the clay. Let the clay push it out a little bit, because otherwise it doesn't have anywhere else to go. So you lock your arms in again, put your left hand down, and then you find that center, and you very gently put force on it. So I'm going to go back up again. Down. So essentially, you're trying to center your clay. So see how it's still kind of wobbly? That means it's not centered. But most of the centering is about feeling, not so much about what it looks like. So sometimes it could look like it's centered and actually not be, or vice versa. So I'm just going to keep going. If I clean my wheel, you can see that there's clay here that's sneaking down and away from my pot, and I want to use that clay. So I'm just going to try and put my finger here and very gently move it inward to force this clay back into the clump. So now that I have it at this position, where it's kind of wide, flat piece of clay, this is when I usually like to start hollowing out to make the bowl. Next step is finding your center. So I usually take my finger, and I try and point your finger. You want to hold your hands two together, because otherwise it's just one. It could wobble around. If you hold them two together, it's more steady. So you try and put your finger down and try and find a place where your hand doesn't want to travel. When I put my hand here, it wants to get pulled around the clay. Over here, it wants to get pulled around the clay. Even over here, it wants to get pulled around. So you have to find exactly that center. So I'm going to find it right here. And you just gently press. Press. You just gently press until you make this hole. So see, I'm kind of holding my hand at an angle. So it kind of gives it this wall to it, as opposed to just being straight down. It kind of goes in at an angle, almost like a real bowl would. Next, you take your needle tool. It looks like a needle, and you poke it through the bottom. So you try and you put your finger at where the base is, and you pull it out. Oh, you see, there's this much clay. So that's about how much you want, like a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, something like that. It's about what you want for a nice base. So next, I'm just gonna make my walls more defined, the tops of them, my rim. That's just a good thing to do so that it all stays at the same height. So next, what I do is I put my hand on the inside like this. So you kind of want to establish a bit of a wall. So the angle you want to pull the wall out to is like this angle. And then I take the sponge and I hold it with my fingertips and I just add pressure from the bottom. So as I add pressure from the bottom and I hold my fingers here as a wall, the clay from the bottom is going to go up through the walls and it's kind of going to fill out this space along the side of my finger. So see how that kind of became a bowl there? Take a rib, it's one of these things. I'm going to very gently go in on the sides to give it the curve you want. Gonna try and fix up the rim. This is a chamois. Get it wet, and then you just hold it over the rim. It helps.
Okay, so there's the video. In that, you saw me show you how to do some centering, and you learned about the bat, and then you saw me go. So I saw the coning up, or shortening of the diameter, coning down, the widening of the diameter. Then I made the bowl, and then after I made the bowl, I raised the walls, and then I did some ribbing, and some light chamois work on the rim to make it look nice. So that's pretty much the basic stuff you need to know. Throwing, what you should know about throwing is the last step you're going to have the chance to work on the inside of your pot. So especially when you're ribbing it out, um, you should make sure that the inside is a nice smooth curve, because you're not going to really have a chance to go back at that unless you hit it with a sponge or something, but then it leaves these weird trace marks. Um, so don't worry about what your pot looks like from the outside, because the next step in making a pot is trimming. So when you guys trim, you can clean up the outside of your pot. All right, so I hope this was helpful, and happy potting.